What's good, everyone? I'm Venom, bringing you more exceptionally high-level StarCraft 2. This time we are continuing our best of 5 that is tied up 1-1 between two of the best players in the whole world. We have the guy that just won the GSL, Stats, up here in the top right. A versatile Protoss that can pretty much do it all. Last game he went for a great little robotic style, but he was torn apart by the puppy Terran, ByuN, who, similar to Game 1, took significant adept damage in the mid-game. But, unlike Game 1, he was able to come back. The defining factor of Game 2, which, if you haven't watched Games 1 or 2, I suggest pausing this right now and watching them, because I'm going to talk about them right now, and they were definitely games that were worth watching. So in Game 1, lots of adept damage to workers, and ByuN stayed in the game, did his thing where he was scary for a moment because he's ByuN. His micro and macro was so good where he still had a lot of stuff even though he lost a lot of workers. But he kind of petered out. He ran into Stats' macro and was unable to win the game. Game 2 was very similar up until an incredibly important turn of events where ByuN did a very strong push with Liberators at a top 4th base right before Stats got an upgrade advantage, and then ByuN dropped the double forges that were about 10 seconds away from finishing the upgrades, killed the upgrades, killed the 3rd base, and it was one of those games as a Protoss player that makes you want to smash your keyboard into oblivion because you really feel like you had the game won and you had the player dead to rights, but that pesky Artosis pylon died and everything went to shit. So we see Stats again. He's getting an adept, getting warp gate, and I know this might sound like a gross generalization, but as far as very basic mechanics go, it is to be noted that very good players will do the same stuff over and over. We can see that Stats, of course, gets an adept, chronos it out, and gets warp gate as he's having a little epileptic fit here trying... Oh no, he was hiding from the Reaper, that's what that was, but a little bit odd as he hid behind the mineral line. But we can see in every game pretty much, Stats chronos out an adept and gets warp gate immediately. And if you're wondering why that is, why he's so diligent in doing that, you chrono out the adept to deny this Reaper, because look, this Reaper's going to try to get in. ByuN actually sneaks by. ByuN is actually the best Reaper micro in the world, but what does it see? Well, it sees the Robo. That's pretty much as much in scouting information as ByuN could have hoped for. And to be quite honest, that was actually a decent scout. And you can't always prevent scouting. We can see that Stats went for a Robo before Mothership Core. Now you might be asking, before Mothership Core, what do you mean? I mean, in the early game, right after your Cyber Core finishes, what you spend your initial gas on is very important. Stats said, I really want the Robo. He got it first before he even got the Mothership Core. Hypothetically, had he gotten the Mothership Core first, he could have warded off that Reaper, and then if the potentially, if the Robo was built maybe a little bit further up, he could have prevented that from being seen. And this time, ByuN is going to go for a drop. Now, the drop is not going to contain a Widow Mine as it usually does. It's going to have a Cyclone. Another Rax is on the way, a Tech Lab onto the factory, so I think it's going to be another 2-base tank push. But it appears as though ByuN is going to be doing aggression, and he's going to run into the same build that he did in Game 2, as we see Stats going for this beautiful 3-gate into Colossus play. I absolutely love this. This is a phenomenal macro build that new players should emulate. And a Widow Mine this time goes at the 3rd base, preventing Stats from getting that. But Stats has multiple observers. He's going to see this drop. And observers are very good because you can prevent yourself from taking unnecessary damage, but it's not just a matter of putting them there, you have to react. And we see Stats does just that by warping in Stalkers at the natural, and boom, he joins up forces. He's a little supply block there. The infamous build 2 pylons next to each other in haste move. Thankfully for him, the Colossus is still being produced. It's absolute brutality to be going a build like this where you're on 2 base, 1 Robo, and really need Colossus, and you get blocked and your Colossus sits there. And we see another attempted drop here, and this is just a 4 Marine with the Cyclone. Does it even have upgrades? No, it doesn't. And nice micro from ByuN as he hot pickups a little bit, does some damage. Liberator comes out, but 3 Stalkers push it away. Only 1 Stalker goes down. So ByuN is trying to pressure his Protoss opponent and soften him up for the tank push, but this wonderful Colossus build is going to be very hard to bust. And we saw in game 2, ByuN did a very good job of transitioning from this push, and he loses another Marine there. Widowmine goes off, kills the probe, so that's not that much of an issue. It delays the base, it's annoying, it's what you should aim to do, and we can see an observer did die there. This is a good move. Like, Terran players should aim to emulate that, blocking bases with mines. But as far as what kind of build Stats did and how hard that was to deal with, not that big of a deal. He went for Robo into double Forge. This is classic stuff. Creator Prime, way back in Wings of Liberty, used to play styles like this. ByuN is continuing to run around with the Cyclone. This is something that ByuN specifically is good at, which is not giving up on drops. Very often Terran players, if their drop gets deflected, kind of like we saw the first drop get deflected, they'll give up on it. They'll either be sloppy with the medevac or lose a lot of the units for no reason or haphazardly send it in while they do something else. But ByuN is very good about retaining his units, and he's very good about maximizing the potential of his units through his micro. Stats is continuing to pump out Colossus. He has 3 now, and whenever you go for these Colossus styles, once you get about 3, you would be surprised what Terran has to do to kill you. And one of the things they can do, though, is load up 4 medevacs worth of units and scream all over you and just drop everything all over you. And it looks like that's what ByuN might do. Actually, he might fly over. We see he's going to drop the natural. Perfect overcharge there and focus fire onto the Medi. But we can see ByuN micros. And he's going to boost here. So that's going to be cleaned up. But the fact that he microed that one little Cyclone out of range meant that all the SCVs had to be microed. And those are the little things that ByuN does right as we see him continuing to produce bio. And breaking down the back rocks is going to be ByuN's next plan of attack. The Colossus is going to make short work of that, though. 2 upgrades are on the way. This was a big part of last game, was Stats lost his upgrades right before they finished. And whenever you go for these styles that are 1-1-1 into 2 base tank push, you really don't go double eBay. That's something that gets delayed into the mid/mid-late game. Notice how this armory is late too. So ByuN is going to be behind in upgrades, and there's going to be a huge power spike for Stats once his 2-2 finishes. Notice this 2-2 is being chrono boosted. That's very important. Back in the day, this was something that you had to actively do, you know, like macro, like injecting a hatchery. Now it's something that you just leave, and I think that's one of the bad things that Legacy of the Void brought to the table. And I think that Legacy of the Void in general brought almost entirely good things to the table. But I prefer the old chrono boost. I think it was more fun to use. To me, this is just kind of like, yeah, you have to be diligent about having it on the right things, but this chrono is going to be on these 2 structures for the rest of the game. Another mine is preventing building here, and this is irritating. Even if ByuN doesn't kill a lot, at least he's delaying the bases, and lots of key upgrades about to finish here. 2-2 and Resonating Glaives. The Protoss should avoid a fight at any cost, or else he'll lose like he did last game. 4 Vikings are being produced at a time for ByuN. But ByuN is at an upgrade disadvantage. He's teching into Ghost. He's trying to play a macro game here with his Protoss opponent's stats. He actually does have a worker lead, and this base is still delayed. So great move there by ByuN to continuously be annoying. And 3-3 has been started. ByuN is slightly ahead in supply. He started Ghosts, And I think that this game will boil down to a nice little timing that ByuN can hit. Maybe he'll attack when his 2-2 finishes, or maybe he'll attack when he maxes. But I think it'll come down to how good the EMPs are on the Ghost. But this is a very scary army for the Terran player, because he can... Oh shit, there were a lot of Adepts in the main. Actually, I think just 4. But he loaded everything, and yeah, okay, just 4 Adepts go into the main, and 5 workers were killed. I thought I missed a huge warp in there. Thankfully I didn't. Pretty inconsequential damage being done there, as it evens up workers. Okay. The warp prism's back here, but all ByuN has to do is shift click a couple Vikings out of his control group. He actually really needs to do that, because if he moves all the way to right here, this warp prism, all it has to do is fly right here, warp in 12 Adepts, and ByuN loses. ByuN is nearing max. The Protoss player is about to have a plethora of important upgrades finish. 3-3 does take forever. Blink is about to finish. Immortals are the choice here, and the Terrans stimming. High Templar are out here, and Psystorm comes down. Tons of Vikings. The Vikings pretty much just one-tapping the Colossus. And the only reason that Colossus didn't get shit on was the upgrade disparity. 3-3 on the way for each player. Now stats will have a big window here, and I know I keep harping on this, but this window is actually when both players want to be aggressive. Gold base being taken here for ByuN. Now if ByuN can get to 3-3, this will get a little bit hairy for stats, and oh, we see big EMPs come down there. And let's look for the little Templar. Do you see many? Because I sure as hell don't. Just 5 of them, and they're all down in the bottom right hand corner without Storm. So this could be really, really bad for stats, is because he's kind of sitting here with very little splash, and ByuN's coming in here. Now this is odd, because ByuN has like 30 supply in Vikings, which are only good for getting rid of Colossus, and stats has no Colossus. So even though ByuN is maxed, he kind of has a bunch of units that aren't that good. And ByuN's not continuing to get air upgrades, which he really needs, because he might need to land these at some point, and you don't want to have to fight 3-3 versus 1-0-1. ByuN scanning here at the top of the ramp, landing more EMP, stimming his bio. Liberators are coming over here now too. They'll probably just get picked off. But workers are dying over here. Adepts are killing workers. And the Adepts shaded out. They're going to shade back in. As a lot of things are going on at once, I don't have picture-in-picture. As we see, Liberators do get sniped, Stim being used, and Psystorm forcing the bio back. And ByuN is trying to defend his workers, but once again, we see a whole crap load of workers being lost. And a ton of Vikings are just kind of over there doing nothing. And I dare say that ByuN maybe overmade Vikings a bit. And he can't even fly into the main, because they're still Vikings, even with that buff they got where they do bonus damage to armor. They still are +1 versus 3-3, and I can't underestimate or understate how big of a deal that is. So this base is established over here at around the 3 o'clock for stats. Both players have eclipsed the time where their 3-3 timing would have really been relevant. Now we are definitely into the late game. We can see DT Blink, which I think is called Shadow Step, is being researched. And the gold base is being attempted to be taken here for stats. Observer out here for stats does see ByuN's army. ByuN has Ghost. ByuN used to play under the ID Ghost King. He's not afraid to make Ghost. And a Storm comes down here, and ByuN is in this really awful, weird position that Terrans face, where they have a lot of Vikings, and the Protoss has stopped making Colossus. As we see a base being made for ByuN. And he's going to try to slow push here, and he finally lands the Vikings mercifully. Now, Vikings are so slow, and again, unupgraded, they'll pretty much be cannon fodder, so that's why he hasn't landed them earlier. and Immortals are going to devastate them as well, but it's better than having 30 supply of flying units. And we see once again Adepts in the natural here, and ByuN trying to figure out which way he wants to defend. He can't really run away at this point. The storm comes down, and the Vikings are shooting used condoms, M&Ms, and peanuts, and ByuN finally defends all of that action going on in his main. As we see, he's lost 36 workers now. EMP comes down, lands a decent amount, but really the Templar and what the Templar make, the Archons, should be the target of the EMP. Although EMP is pretty much good against everything that Protoss has. Stem coming down here, but once again, tons of Immortals. Immortals do a ton of damage to pretty much everything ByuN has on the ground except for Gem Rainers. And hell, they do a lot of damage to those too because they have +3. Storm comes down onto the Liberator and the Bio. And you see how ByuN's Vikings are just kind of flying fruitlessly around at this point. ByuN's in this awkward position where the Protoss has transitioned out of Colossus, and now he's fully transitioning out of, anti-Colossus, and suddenly we see the Protoss pulling forward again, and ByuN's not making Vikings anymore. He's making pretty much Bio Medevac, but Stats completely pushes him away, and now that Stats has killed almost all the Vikings, he's free to go back into Colossus if he wants to, and another one is made. And this is something brilliant that you should be doing as a Protoss, is forcing your opponent to make Vikings, and then when they make a lot of Vikings, going into another tech. It's not like ByuN did something wrong because he had to make enough Vikings to fight the Colossus, but then he's kind of stuck with the Vikings. We saw a similar trend occur in 2010 and 2011 when Zerg players would have to make Corruptors to try to deal with Colossi. You're kind of stuck with this unit that's only good at doing one thing that, well, the units that it's good at countering isn't really there anymore. Adepts are in the Prism here. A little bit saddening. I was hoping those would be Templar so we could see Storm drop, but Adepts, of course, are very strong. And Adept harassment really doesn't require a lot of micro. You drop the Adepts, and then you click the Shades somewhere, kill a bunch of workers, and then the Adepts teleport to another spot where there's more workers to be brutalized. Sensor Tower is out for ByuN, which is very, very important because that will help him keep tabs of the army. Unfortunately for him, that's going to be an issue. Notice 15 vacant supply here for our Protoss player, so he can warp in some Zealots if he wants. The Adepts get dropped and Zealots get warped in. Or actually, more Adepts get warped in, excuse me. And a huge drop here for ByuN, and he scans ahead to see, do you have any Templar there? No, just some cannons. And this is why you can't just make mass cannons to deal with drops. New players, as we see an attack going on here, his stats say screw it and gets EMP'd quite a bit there on his Immortals, but he's coming down here, and a lot of probes die as the Adepts are doing some damage here, and the 4th base goes down, 4th base, 5th base, whatever the hell that is, the 3 o'clock. DT is over here, it's thwarted by the PF combo. And the Terran Bio is screaming forward. Terran Bio, once it hits 3-3, just rips through cannons, guys. That's why you just can't make mass cannons. Stats' cannons are very good in the mid-game, but once Terran has 3-3, all it takes is some Marine Marauder and some Medevacs, and it's going to be a bad day for you. And Stats is posturing. Both players remarkably close in supply. ByuN kills another base, but Stats has so many bases, and at this point, both players are in little weird positions where their armies are in awkward spots mid-map, and they've both taken pretty severe damage. Again, both players very close in supply, neither one of them really mining. Remember, ByuN lost almost all of his workers, guys. And he's landing Vikings. He finally found a use for the Vikings. Failed EMPs there. Oh no, not actually failed. They kill the Dark Templar shield and reveal them. But really, you want the EMPs at this phase. Well, ideally, ByuN wants to land these Templars with EMPs or snipes. That's going to be the money shot. As it stands, Stats is really going to rely on big size storms to win him this engagement. 10 Vikings are out, so that pretty much means that the Colossus is going to be completely nullified. Colossus, he only has 1. 331 are the upgrades for stats. He's going to move over to this PF and get almost everything at the front side. EMP'd. Nice feedback. Stats runs forward with another, and nice storm there. But he does lose the high temp for his trouble. Beautiful adept placement there. Because very likely that ByuN would just lift at some point and try to take that base if he got desperate. Notice how this base has been ravaged. This base is taken, this base is taken. That one got dropped, that one got killed by the units from the drop. Storm's coming down here, but the majority of the army remains unmolested. As this game is very back and forth, more EMPs come down, but the ghosts are out of energy. You might see a full engage here, but no High Templar storm. That's huge, but a big flank coming here from stats. And when you have this many 3-3 adepts, it can be very rough. High ground advantage for ByuN and Vikings. He's fighting with everything he has, tooth and nail, the puppy Terran, but unfortunately for him, the power of Protoss will reign supreme, as stats had so many units. Notice how much stats was mining compared to ByuN at the end of that game. So a very good knockdown, drag-out macro game. Stats is currently up 2-1 in the best of 5. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss these subsequent games. Click the bell notification icon so you don't miss any future videos, because I also do 2v2 videos, strategy guides, other good stuff. StarCraft Remastered's coming up. You definitely don't want to miss any of that, guys.